medieval fishwives missing out, slut-shamed, the rapist, typical internal mothers, I am back. So, in the previous video, I was talking about the parents who appeared on the Lucy Letby documentary Conviction and their questionable decision to tell their child, at least by the time he was 7 years old, that Lucy Letby was, quote, a naughty nurse who tried to kill you. I had a bit of a look about what professionals might say about this disclosure, although obviously I didn't go that deep because I am an uneducated oik. Although I've long had an interest in psychology and some training. It just immediately struck me as the wrong thing to do. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little more about that, and then I'm going to move on to the award-winning podcast interview with the parents of babies L and M, which, let me tell you, is horrifying and really quite worrying. Where was the support and guidance for these families? Doesn't appear to have existed. Children on average begin to notice a difference between things that are real and things that are not at the age of 3, although these are the very first steps. Obviously, there's going to be an awful lot of guesswork and a lot is hit and miss because they don't have an overarching ethic or principle guiding them. There's no rationale, really. And you can often be really surprised by what children actually believe. And as with adults, obviously, there's going to be a real disparity between what is logically, rationally understood and what those emotionally led fears are saying. They're not passing all modules of rational thought at once or being held back a year. It comes in gradual piecemeal elements. And obviously, children are very vulnerable when there's something that strikes a nerve or aligns with a primal fear. And that makes this especially difficult subject matter. And they may not have the language to articulate what exactly it is they're experiencing. It might just be bedwetting and nightmares. And one of the other problems is children often don't share how frightened or how childlike their thinking is because they're aware that there may be some judgment. You know, if they've got older siblings or anything like that, you know, you see how kids are talking about, well, I know Santa isn't real. You can see very clearly how much of their self-esteem and their peer respect is built upon being discriminating and mature. They can be really tricky to judge. You know, like kids who are really savvy with technology might really truly not understand that a monster in a film is CGI. Or kids who tell rude jokes really don't know, like, about sexual reproduction or whatever it is. So much of their development is by parroting, mimicry and blagging, essentially. It really is. They mask their immaturity quite a lot because of competing with each other, and they're aware that this is expected of them, but also they're acutely aware that the more mature they appear, the more trust and freedom they get from their caregivers, and they want to impress their caregivers as well. Because of the extra freedom they will probably get from it, but you know, if they admit to, say, being frightened at a film that their parents didn't think was appropriate for them, they're never going to admit that because they wouldn't be able to see another, and they want to see another. So anyway, I had a little think about something that had really frightened me as a child, and one of the things that sticks out is a really bad storm that happened. I thought I was about 4 or 5. It was very scary, and because of its ferocity, it damaged local buildings and a couple of famous trees, so I was able to find documentation of it. Because I was interested in how old I actually was when it happened, and it was surprising. This storm, it caused a load of damage. There were electricity outages and like cars were flattened by falling trees, and like loads of like old houses were smashed up and stuff like that. And that night it kicked off, I remember being absolutely terrified in my bed. I remember my little sister going and like hiding in my parents' room, and the dogs howling, and I was too scared to get out of my bed and go and see my elder sisters, because I was convinced there were monsters or ghosts or evil spirits or something smashing everything up. It's like all of these noises whipping through the house sounded like something really evil, and hearing the chickens outside going mad and massive distress, it felt really profoundly malevolent. There were almost different chapters to it. My memory of this is so vivid, and the way my imagination, my memory as well, filled in what I didn't know with images. I thought I was about 4. That was my guessing. This is one of my first memories, and I was about 4, and I was actually nearly 7. Obviously 7 is still a really small child, but I picture myself as such a baby, like almost, certainly not having a good grasp of words, so I was struggling to articulate myself. And that is really in conflict with how I remember myself as a 7-year-old. It's really difficult to believe that I actually was almost 7 from my recollections, but I definitely was. There's no two ways about it. I remember my 7th birthday. I remember the teacher I had, and it seems completely at odds with this memory. I don't think in any other respect I would have appeared as immature as that. There's an irreconcilable disparity between the two there. Children do not develop on a entirely like linear frontier. They are in a constant state of developmental flux, and there are a load of like quite primal things, particularly related to fears, that are really extremely evocative and hang on for dear life, despite the child sometimes being, quite grown up. There's a real power in kind of nightmarish imagery that can make people regress, because these are, the idea of being attacked when you're a helpless infant, is going to go back to some really primal fears, and it worries me. So this little boy was just 1 year older than I was when a storm became this incredible sort of waking nightmare, which I unwillingly embellished with all of these terrifying details. And he's intellectually disabled. He's about 2 years behind. He's already going through all of the issues with his disability, especially the seizures, which, as we heard from his mum, sometimes he'll ask if they will kill him. And he's in this situation where his mum and dad are watching or listening to this stuff, which is all over the news. And his dad is crying, and he has seen their reactions to this news, and he wants to understand, and he's asking because he already knows that this woman has tried to kill him, something that now the mother is not so sure of. And what a mess. It's extremely sad. And it would appear that attempted murder is quite a nebulous concept for children to get their heads round. And let's not forget, it is all the more complex because of, the obvious fact that the entire trial was a sham. What the fuck were the police liaison doing? You'd have thought they would have immediately keyed them into ways to help break this and broach this to their children, not just leave them fucking dumping this indigestible amount of information on her child. Like she said, the mother said, it was when her sentencing happened and the dad was crying and it was all over the news. And, this was a planned event. This was scheduled. We knew this was easily avoidable. But the thing is, that boy already knew, and he was guessing, is that her? We're in the situation now where a 7-year-old boy who is developmentally delayed is guessing what's going on because his parents have got the telly on discussing this hugely sensitive case. His dad is crying, and he has already been told that there was a naughty nurse who tried to kill him. They're guessing. What's up, Mum? Dad? What's wrong? What's wrong? It's awful. I mean, it's like on an airplane emergency. Affix your own mask before trying to help someone else. Deal with your own trauma and confusion and horror before you try and guide a child through it. You know, the chances that he is going to feel further isolated and othered, or maybe that he was selected because he was obviously, you know, like not normal, as he had already previously complained about. Or, you know, that he's going to feel guilty because his parents are in such a state about something to do with him. Their parents, if they really wanted to see this, they should have arranged for the boy to do something else outside of the house that was really fun. They could just get through it. But, you know, forewarned is forearmed always. And that's presumably what the police liaison and the victim support and, you know, all of the support and guidance they're being given is for. Well, where was it? You would have thought this is one of the first things the police and the associated services are going to tackle, wouldn't you? How will this impact your children? Let alone, how do you speak to them about concepts like attempted murder, which are really tricky for children to understand? I mean, how on earth was this not properly dealt with and addressed before it arose? The problem with trauma is it really impacts on your perceptions and your responses and your ability to think clearly and articulate yourself. You react before you've had time to think about it. Like there are just visceral knee-jerk responses, or you don't react and you just seem really vacant, and that's very damaging for children. I suffered PTSD after a man broke into my flat and attacked me, and a lot of the therapy I received afterwards was at minimising the threat that he posed. You know, I even had hypnotherapy to kind of imagine it very differently, and it really helped me. Whereas these people are being consistently implored almost to kind of view Lucy Letby as guilty and as this malevolent monster. And that's a cultural obsession. And the worst bit about this is the fact that it didn't happen. You know, Lucy Letby is innocent, and they are trying to say that events that they never even witnessed occurred, which is something that is almost impossible to emotionally, mentally reframe. This is one hell of a load of gaslighting. Quite a thing to recover from. I think for those who had the police come knocking at the door, effectively they were primed for this because many of them suffered, or their children did, horrific medical negligence. And we all know how, you know, ranks close and you're shut down when that happens. So when the police turned up, maybe it felt like someone's listening finally. It could quite possibly answer all of their feelings of being treated with contempt, being dismissed, being ignored, and then that's easily redirected. When the police, with all of the authority they embody, turn up and say, yeah, you were being tricked and lied to, and you have been victim to this horrendous act that the managers were trying to cover up, by the way. Effectively, the police walked into their homes that were in the dark, threw the door open and stood there posing in robes with lights shining behind them. I mean, this is all quite intoxicating because normally, you know, for however law-abiding you are, the police turning up is normally quite tense. When you get liaison officers and they're talking about building a relationship and getting to know you and your fears and all of that, then they end up holding a lot of power. They are trained to reassure and, you know, ingratiate themselves. They are. But also considering just the posturing, the pontificating and moralising of those who are determined to condemn Letby, and particularly they will often use really grotesque language about how she tortured the babies and stuff like that, and the complete insensitivity to what they've actually presumably been going through, if you look at it with any kind of psychological insight, against people who were telling us to shut the fuck up. I mean, it's just a catastrophe. But anyway, on to the podcast, where we are graced with the linguistical skill of the fabulous Liz Hull.
So babies L&M were twin boys, as you say. They were born at the beginning of April 2016. You will remember...
Will I? God, she's a genius.
that they were doing well, and then suddenly on the same shift.
The same shift as what, Liz?
Baby M collapsed. Suddenly.
You only become this accomplished with language after thousands of hours of practice. I mean, it's a tiny snippet of the incredible linguistic grace and precision with which Liz chooses her words. Anyway, don't worry, I'm not going to be this petty or this Liz-centric throughout the rest. All right, bye, Liz.
You will remember that they were doing well, and then suddenly on the same shift, baby M collapsed. Suddenly, the allegation was that Lucy Letby injected air into his bloodstream. I mean, he actually almost died. Only through the immense skill of the doctors and nurses at the Countess was he saved. He had nearly 30 minutes of CPR, and they effectively brought him back to life.
And in fact, in the interview, the dad of baby M doesn't say this, but he told us this later, didn't he? That for him, Dr. J-Ram is a hero.
Yeah, he said, he saved his boy's life, and they would only likely have one child if it wasn't for Dr. J-Ram.
Oh, it's so nice that they added in that essential morsel of information. The really brilliant Dr. J-Ram saving babies L and M, but forgetting that he had seen Lucy Letby try to murder child K. Or, well, sorry, rather he had lied that he saw her try to kill child K, having made exactly the same time mistake as the police, which is just annoying. So irritating when you forget something that is etched in your mind and in your nightmares forever. For over 13 months, and you do nothing at the time as well, damn it. Baby K being the previous indictment baby that presumably, if he had acted over, would have meant Lucy Letby never came near these babies, which would have been the responsible thing to do, if any of it was true. I wonder how these parents feel about that now.
So how are you feeling at the moment?
Me personally, it's been very difficult, very mentally and physically draining. Also working at the same time, getting time off work, it's been challenging.
Previously, we didn't know our other child was involved with the attempted murder. We knew about baby M, what happened on the 9th of April 2016.
There is something quite unsettling about the way the mother gives the exact date and the year. I mean, she's talking to two journalists who know all of these details. And yet there are other examples of that in this interview. Her precision and repetition too, that it just speaks of her being stuck in that moment, which is not surprising because the trial was still going on during this interview. And I say this as somebody who is really kind of lent towards that obsessive behaviour anyway, but it won't help her.
And until then, we were very, very happy. And we were celebrating the second day of our children. Our family came from London, and then they said, wow, congratulations, you've become the mother of 2 children.
And now coming on to baby M's collapse.
I was the first one into the unit at that time. The image that I saw was just horrendous. That image I'll never forget because it's on the brain.
Some people may overlook the gravity of seeing your baby. I mean, just the medical emergency, the shock of them not being well is one piece, but to see them being resuscitated, it's quite violent.
He was just crying. And I said, oh my God, what happened? And the doctor was giving compressions to baby M. One of the nurses, Mary Griffith, said to me, I've not done anything. Now
this is really fucking weird. And no wonder it's stuck in her head. My God, what was going on in that room? What accusations were flying about? What the hell was the explanation for that? So weird.
And Lucy was behind her, and I was just praying to God.
So what did you see of Lucy Letby at that point?
She was just standing like that. She was very cool, calm, calculated, and a criminal-minded lady, but we didn't notice anything at the time.
Okay, so I haven't cut anything out there. That's precisely how it went. Liz Hull asks, and what do you remember of Lucy Letby? There you go. She was very cool, calm, a calculated and criminal-minded lady. But we didn't notice anything at the time. The amount of projection and retroactive projection at that going on is off the charts. Is there any possible way you can glean the fact that somebody is calculated and criminally minded from the way they stand in front of you? Is there? She's just been through something horrifying and then had thoughts planted in her head. I suppose we get to thank the award-winning Rosas, the heroic doctors, and the incredible Dewi Evans for that. It's the epitome of a retrospective refit. It really is. You know, a retrospective regrading of somebody as evil because you've been told something about them. This is the Horn halo effect. They could only do this to somebody who was heavily traumatised.
Calculated and a criminal-minded lady, but we didn't notice anything at the time. She was standing calm and cool.
Ravi Jayaram said she was great in a crisis because she didn't panic.
And what I can remember was Mary Griffith's face. She was saying, I've not done anything. But at that time, I didn't know her name. But when I saw her in court, I knew her name. And I told the police, she's the nurse who said to me, I've not done anything.
It seems silly to not wonder what accusations or insinuations had occurred in that room before the parents entered. Listen to how frantic she sounds and the repetition. I mean, I'm not suggesting it is the same. I'm definitely not. But it sounds like the pressured speech that's associated with bipolar disorder. This is happening because the direct actions of the police, the judiciary, Dewi Evans, and those grudge-bearing, conniving doctors.
And Lucy was standing behind Mary Griffiths, and Mary Griffiths was very worried and panicked.
And I think it's right, isn't it, that you didn't realise at that stage that anything had happened to your other son?
We didn't know anything even afterwards until the police came knocking.
Ah, yes, the miraculously discovered insulin report that was initially dismissed because it was so ridiculously high. This episode occurred overnight when the parents weren't there and the hospital couldn't even be bothered to tell them.
What did you think about Lucy Letby when she gave evidence in her defence and denied everything?
It was either her or somebody else. There was only 2 people there, and she's the only one is in the dock for it. And I'm sure the police have investigated the other nurse who was on the shift. So it's one or the other, and I don't think it's the wrong nurse.
Well, that's unfortunate. The police have led them to believe that anyone else was investigated, isn't it?
On her second interview with the police on 12th of June 2019.
Do you see what I mean now? If you previously thought I was a bit weird, like in pointing out how she mentioned the year and the month and the day, do you see what I mean? She could have just said on her second interview, but she can't because she's right in that moment. She's right going back through it. She's got everything in her head. Can you imagine the oppressive weight of all of this?
She accepted that someone has given insulin to baby Elle.
Lucy Letby was in no position to say that, and actually she didn't. Adam King, the barrister, explained very succinctly in the unheard debate what she had actually conceded. And that was, I didn't poison that child with insulin, and I wouldn't poison that child with insulin. I don't know what your test says. And then ultimately, after endless questions, threw her hands up in the air and said, look, I don't know. If you are telling me this is objective proof that there is this level of exogenous insulin in this baby's blood, then obviously somebody has poisoned him, but it wasn't me. And it sounds like she had very good reason to have these reservations over immunoassays, which on their label say in bright red ink, not for investigation of factitious or externally administered insulin. These were the few unanimous verdicts she got, locked up for life on evidence that wouldn't be enough to get an athlete's medal stripped from them.
And it's a very high volume of insulin, so she must be aware.
The doctors didn't think anything of it, even when it was rung through from the lab. It was so fantastically high and not in fitting with the clinical picture, they did nothing.
Only she and Mary Griffith were in the room.
And Lucy Letby was often on duty, wasn't she, looking after your boys?
She always liked extra time.
Boo! If you work for the NHS, work minimal hours, please. It's better you do all the training on the NHS, become a TV presenter or a UKIP candidate. Anyway, so the mum asked her about this.
Lucy, do you work all day and night time? And she said, yes, I'm working extra time.
Well, clearly she cared about the babies. She wasn't married or in a relationship. She didn't have children. She lived close by and she just bought her own home, as well as being quite ambitious. And next, we start to get a little bit of an insight into what kind of stoking and incitement these parents are subject to by journalist shitbirds like Liz Hull.
And you're saying she was more aggressive after the boys recovered because she was frustrated that she hadn't managed to kill them?
I would love to see the verbatim notes and where precisely Liz Hull got that and whether she was putting some words in the mother's mouth, because she seems thoroughly untrustworthy. But anyway, this is what the mother actually said as to Lucy's alleged aggression.
She asked us to change a nappy, and we'd said to her, "Oh, we're very scared about changing nappies because we were first-time parents. So can you show us how to change a nappy because my kids are very small and tiny?" And at the time, her body language and her behaviour totally changed.
So there it is. That's the example. This is something that is said about Lucy Letby all of the time. She was aggressive with the parents when she failed to kill their babies, and this is it. Her body language totally changed after she was asked to help show change a nappy. Now, from my experience of having babies, and I was only on a standard ward, but I did spend multiple days after each delivery in hospital, I can only say I've never been asked to change a nappy. And I would imagine that being asked to change a nappy could well be something people take offence at. Although with premature babies, I can understand there will be added reticence, and especially with twins, this is something that is likely to happen more. Parents are often a bit slow, I think, in changing nappies, and it does have some pretty nasty consequences in terms of rashes. Can be really horrible for the babies. So impressing upon parents how important it is to regularly change them is kind of vital. But my thoughts initially were, right, mother is just kind of too scared of handling her babies and they're trying to prompt her into action. But the fact that she says we were asked to change a nappy and we said, it makes me think that quite likely it was the dad who was asked. Maybe the mum maybe she was breastfeeding or expressing milk, and he's responded by going, "Ooh, I don't know." And nurses are going to be a bit frustrated by that. Like, I understand the nervousness of it, like, and they were 7 weeks premature and twins, so they're going to be really little, and certainly like getting babies dressed I used to get really flustered with that, like having to put their tiny limbs in sleeves, and it used to stress me out. I get it totally, but Lucy Letby was one of the higher qualified nurses on the unit, which is chronically underfunded with hardly any, adequately trained neonatal practitioners. And she is really, really busy. And one of the parents, quite likely the dad, I would say, is kind of quibbling over whether he's capable of changing a nappy. Certainly in the hospital units I was on, that would have, you might have got short shrift with that. I mean to sound harsh, but I think it's something you should be able to expect parents to do. Did they do antenatal classes? You're not being asked to intubate them. So, yeah, it just sounds like retrospectively assessing somebody's body language is just insane. I just imagine a dad being seen as maybe kind of whatabouterying his way out of changing a nappy, potentially, or the mother being prompted because they're a bit concerned maybe she's depressed and she's not engaging enough with her baby. It doesn't sound, well, there's no examples of aggression, are there? It's a body language change. It just seems very, very spurious. Like with the laughing anecdote, if this was a different nurse, what then? If both these turn out to be a different nurse, will there be a new investigation to find out who this is? Might they concede Lucy Letby is innocent, but there's some other bitch working on the ward? It's such weak evidence. I mean, I don't know what else you can say other than she was busy. Ask one of the nursery nurses.
after the incident happened. I think she was unsuccessful with killing my kids. That's why she was very annoyed with us. She thought that I couldn't kill your baby.
Imagine having this knocking around in your head.
And then in June, my kids were discharged.
The repeated "my kids" seems a little bit strange. I might be being petty here.
She asked another doctor, do I have to be worried about what Dr. Gibbs has said? That means she was now suspecting about herself that she did all the things.
By this, is she suggesting that Lucy Letby is guilty but somehow has blocked it out? It's a strange comment. That text message, though, I think was about child O's hematoma.
So we know that months before your boys were attacked, that Lucy Letby had been flagged as a concern by the consultants, but she was still allowed to work. What do you think about that?
Oh, Liz, what a brilliant question. Let's wonder. I wonder.
Whenever the deaths of the babies was happening and I was in the hospital, and then many of the parents said, today this baby died, today this baby died. And I thought, oh my God, so many babies had died. And then the parents said, maybe it's because they're premature babies. And I thought, oh my God, my boys are also premature and 7 weeks early. And I thought, oh my God, but I said to them, my boys are very healthy, because when they were born, the doctor said, your boys are very healthy. Dr. Gibbs also said to me, don't worry, your boys are very healthy. And then the parents are discussing, this baby died, this girl died, this boy died. Oh my God.
There are a lot of people who say that there weren't as many as 17 deaths during this period. And one of the reasons is Judith Moritz said in the first panorama concerning Lucy Letby that there were 13 and Lucy Letby was there for everyone. We know that's not true. I think this probably bolsters the claim that there were. In fact, news reports at the time cited 17. It sounds absolutely terrifying, and I'm quite shocked, to be honest, because whether it's losing babies or even the pain of childbirth, women are generally really very careful about not scaring other women. So I'm kind of shocked that she would be hearing all of this. Now, her babies were in hospital from April to June 2016. The last indictment baby to die at the hospital was child I in October of 2015. And the subsequent one was right at the end of June. So I don't know which babies these could be. It's a bit confusing. Maybe all of the non-indictment babies died in very short succession, but that doesn't make sense. I don't know how to make sense of that.
It gave me such a headache. I didn't want to go to the hospital. I just want to ring and see how they were doing. But my husband said it's better if we just go to the hospital and see what has happened to our kids.
This is a huge red flag for postnatal depression, which is an insidious bastard of an illness. If you know anyone who would rather not go into the hospital and see their babies, then really try and get them to a GP. I'm not saying that's the situation with this mum. I don't know what to say, but yeah, don't let that slip past you. This is a huge red flag.
So do you think the hospital should have done more to get Lucy Letby off the unit?
Well, my dislike for Liz Hull may be very obvious, but it's these questions, isn't it? It's these that really mark her out as the journalistic titan she is. She's always got a way of asking what no one else would think of asking and just delving that bit deeper.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely.
They had the chances to do that before 2016. They could have done in 2015 when Dr. Jayaram brought it up with the head of nursing.
Why has nobody explained to them that you can't just remove a nurse because a doctor says, get her off the ward? I mean, that is all the doctors were saying at this stage. It's all they were saying. Don't like her, get her off the ward. In fact, here is a segment from the grievance panel notes on Jabe's brilliant channel.
Chris Green, was there a push to move Lucy? Jayaram, all that was said was that we had concerns. We noted the association with Lucy being present. Decisions made were entirely those made by senior management. No clinicians were involved in the decision to remove Lucy from the unit. It was a board decision. Chris Green, was there a suggestion that if Lucy was not moved, then the police would be called? Jayaram, no. A discussion took place that if no explanation found, then the police may have to be involved. Don't recall any discussion as explicit as that. Concern was raised about Lucy, as she had been exposed to so many deaths. Both the consultants and nursing colleagues felt that it could have been traumatic for her.
So that's nice, isn't it? It's very thoughtful. Who's worried about her being traumatised? These parents have already been kept in the dark about stuff. They've seen horrifying scenes. They've been going through an unimaginable level of stress. And nobody has said to them, look, it's not that the hospital managers don't give a shit about your babies. And there was this nurse wandering around murdering them. It's just that, when a doctor says, I don't like her, get her off the ward, and then refuses to substantiate that in any way, they can't do anything. I mean, had anyone told these parents that the hospital had instructed numerous internal and external reviews throughout this period?
We know, don't we, that 8 months before baby L was attacked and poisoned with insulin, that another baby F, was poisoned as well, but those blood tests were missed. Nobody realised their significance.
I blame the doctors and the hospital.
But then again, it wasn't the Liverpool hospital. They actually rang the results through. The people at Chester are the ones that didn't act upon the results because by the morning he had recovered. So they didn't act upon those results. But they never told us. As a parent, surely you tell us. Whatever happens, even if it's minor or whatever, they need to tell the parents at least. This happened in the night. I couldn't believe it. The similar incident happened a few months prior to that, and fortunately we got a friendship with that family because of similarities and stuff.
Is that supposed to happen? Like, before conviction, the victims, alleged victims, and they're victims, as I said at the very beginning. Is that supposed to happen, that they get to know each other well enough to call each other friends? I mean, they wouldn't have met each other in hospital. So what precisely is that about? Who introduced them? Has there been some family conferences or something that no one knows about? That seems very abnormal to me and a little bit suspect, maybe.
And do you feel let down by the hospital?
How does she do that? She's a mind reader, isn't she? How would she know that anyone would be asking that question? She's just such a brilliant journalist, a mind reader, a clairvoyant, a savant.
Very, very let down. They could have stopped it. They could have done it a lot earlier. And they need to be held accountable as well. Obviously, I know they didn't know there was a poisoner at work, and it's difficult to prove that. But the doctors did speak up. The doctors spoke up in 2015. They should have acted on that. There's no way she should have been able to get away with it for so long.
Why did they wait until 2016? As soon as 2 or 3 babies died, why wait until 17 babies? I'll blame the hospital as well.
And what difference do you think it would have made if the hospital bosses had listened and paid more attention to the doctors?
If they'd acted upon the initial suspicions, then they definitely could have stopped any more babies being attacked.
Hey, we're the doctors and we're hardly ever on the ward, but, we don't like the look of this nurse. Oh no, it's not the fact we didn't assess child C, for example, weighing 800 grams until the day he died despite all the vomiting black fluid. I'm sure it's the fact it was this nurse was present, so get rid of her. And then later coming up with an obviously fabricated tale of seeing her trying to murder a baby is not really enough. I wonder how these poor people feel now. They have been so absolutely betrayed.
It would have prevented multiple deaths, really. It didn't have to be that many. It could have been a couple, maybe. The investigations could have started and she would have been off the unit and they would have been able to investigate properly.
It would be fascinating to hear an interview with these parents now after everything that has transpired. And I'm not suggesting that they would believe Lucy Letby is innocent. That's got to be a near impossible climb down from the place they were at. But they must be absolutely furious right now to know of everything that actually was investigated and all of the things that went on, and particularly Ravi Jayaram's conduct.
And she was always lying and said the babies have infections, and the experts say it's not about the infection. Infection is not the cause of death, it's the unnatural cause.
Can you imagine anything worse, anything more exploitative than having suffered the loss of your baby in hospital? You know, the hospital's dirty and understaffed and all of the other things. I'm sure they all have their own stories of being left waiting or disturbed by things that happened. And then a couple of years later, some doctor is wheeled in, and over 10 minutes of drinking coffee in a police station, he looks at a pathologist report. He's not a pathologist. The pathologist didn't see anything worrying, but he's decided it is worrying. And so he, without any comeback from the actual pathologist who did the exam, he decides, no, we're just going to discard this death report and come up with something new. Knock, knock. Sorry, she's going to be arrested this morning, and it's going to be international news. Yeah. Sorry, we think your baby was murdered. This is what they did. This is what they did. If you've ever seen anybody go through the loss of a baby, just imagine that.
So how did you feel when you heard her in court denying time and time again that she'd done anything to harm any baby?
I think they probably thought it was great, Liz. What do you think? Outrageous, obviously, for journalists like you when people protest their innocence, but we could try and manoeuvre it into some kind of a nasty and manipulative attack on the parents, Cast it as gaslighting, perhaps. Only if that makes you feel better, what do you think, Liz? She's had such a central role in this national catastrophe of justice and health services, and of course responsibility of our press. I mean, let's hope to God that her contribution to this shit show is never forgotten. I won't be forgetting it. Her, Cheatham, Moritz, and God knows what is wrong with these women, especially the amount of misogyny seeping from every pore of their constructed story.
I feel very sick of her. Oh my God, I go home with a headache. I have to take paracetamol every day when I go home just because I have to listen to her lie and lie.
Why does she feel like she has to be there every day, even though it's making her feel ill? She's ending every day on a bad note because she's got a headache. Why is she doing it? Her children comprise only a little bit of this trial, and she's getting increasingly infuriated and frustrated because she's been told Letby is lying. And this is just, it's just, if she'd been given advice by a trauma-informed counsellor, they would be telling her, do not go. But she hasn't, has she?
Take paracetamol every day when I go home just because I have to listen to her lie and lie and lie. And I say now, enough. Don't tell lies, please. When you've sat there in the dock and taken the oath, I think just please say everything that's right and true. So why are you telling lies?
I wonder if there's any examples that she would be able to give where Lucy Letby had actually lied, whether it's just all about her going in, assuming that her babies were subject to an attempted murder, other babies were too, and other babies were murdered. And, Lucy Letby must be guilty, so therefore she must be lying. And with this, she's sitting there tortured. Listen to Lucy Letby talk about how Lucy Letby sees things as happening, with the assumption that everything she's saying is a lie. I mean, this is like almost the most perfect way to radicalise somebody, isn't it?
You are lying to yourself and to your religion also. Why?
Can you imagine everything Lucy Letby has been through at this stage, from the deaths and collapses themselves, which deeply traumatised her, which we know because we've heard from Catherine de Beja, to the accusations and the bullying and then the investigation and then that first arrest, and then spending all that time on bail, and then finally the last arrest, which apparently was really quite rough, traumatic. Yeah, so that is what ultimately triggered her PTSD, and we've never seen body-worn footage of that. Isn't that funny? and then being interrogated 13 times over 3 days. And then realising she's not going to get bail again. She's already national news. Now she is the top target in the women's estate. Everybody would like to chuck some hot sugar water or shiv her. And she's there for 2 years on segregation. And she sees everything her parents are going through, and she knows her house is going to be going up for sale, and she knows, obviously, because her cats were RSPCA rescues, and it is the rules of the RSPCA. They have to go back to them in the case that the adopter can't look after them anymore. So that's why her mum didn't adopt them. Some of you nasty twats on Twitter. And then finally, as the trial approaches, she is moved prison to be closer to the court, and during that, the prison forget, yes, honest mistake, they forgot to send her medication, like anti-anxiety, antidepressants, sleeping pills, all of that with her. And this doesn't become rectified for a week. And there is no excuse for that. I mean, come on, a doctor couldn't visit her in prison where they work in the prisons and write a prescription out and it couldn't be sorted in the day. No. So Lucy Letby is then left without all of her medication and she becomes incoherent. She can't speak properly. That gets sorted after a short trial delay, and then she is being transported for 5 hours a day in a prison van to and from court, just to sit in the witness box, hear all of her colleagues lie about her, have people laugh about her distress, and then this sea of faces in the courtroom glaring down at her with all of this hatred. Not just the parents, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the friends. My God, it is a hellscape. It is the most dark nightmare I can possibly imagine. That poor woman.
So we know many families have been impacted by what Lucy Letby's done.
Did I mention that this was recorded before the verdict?
Just explain to us exactly the impact this has had on your family and whether your sons have suffered any life-changing, lifelong injuries.
She took everything. Our joy, happiness.
Aside from the trauma of their little boy collapsing in front of them like that and having to see him resuscitated, all of this comes down to that investigation. All of it does.
I'm not the same person I was before. And in the run-up to the case, I'd suffered a seizure. Before October, I suffered a seizure.
I've known people going through monumental stress and never known anyone to have a seizure. This is horrific. The poor guy.
It's just constant. I'm a changed person. It's hard to put into words just how it could have gone on so long, why it went on so long. These are the answers we need, but that's a different part of the investigation. We have to wait for the hospital to answer those questions, but it could have been stopped. That's the fact. It could have been stopped by the head of nursing.
That would be Karen Rees, who repeatedly explained that they would give her no evidence, no justification even for their concerns, but that also they'd gone directly above her head, so she didn't know about it for a really long time. It's not just Lucy Letby who should be entitled to a whacking load of compensation, and she should obviously be the main beneficiary of multi-million pounds compensation, or I doubt it'll ever happen. But so do some of the other people whose names were dragged into it, and especially so do these parents whose tragedies were weaponised in this way.
So you've talked about something should have been done sooner. So do you think there should be some sort of inquiry into what happened at the hospital and why she was allowed to get away with this for so long?
Yes, definitely. Something needs to be done there. The head of nursing needs to be accountable. She refused to take Lucy Letby out of the unit. She didn't listen to the doctor, and things just carried on. She has to take the responsibility. She made that decision. She could have stopped this long before.
So, while I'll not criticise this parent at all for saying what he's just said, Hull, Cheetham, the Daily Mail have, without correcting, pulling up, editing out, published a claim that Karen Rees could have stopped multiple baby murders and didn't. It's unfortunate the podcast is so insufferable I can't bear to listen as to whether Karen Rees was given a right of reply.
Because she created the impression to the doctors, to the staff and everyone that I'm a very good nurse, I'm doing very well. She created that impression and pressured the doctors and everyone.
I'm completely baffled as to how she pressured the doctors.
That's why no one suspected her.
It's really shocking to hear you say that you had no idea that baby Elle suffered any deterioration on the unit.
It is really shocking that that hospital was such a negligent shithole, yes, Liz.
So for years you had no clue that he had potentially some symptoms of any illness or problem.
They haven't said anything to us. Every time we rang them and they didn't say anything to us.
They never mentioned baby Elle. We didn't even know until the police came and told us about the ratio between C-peptide and insulin.
I think that's because it was this time genuinely just a complete non-event and an erroneous result. But they're right. They should have been told.
Otherwise, we would never have known.
Have you been to doctors now you know what's happened to him?
As far as we know, baby M did have a scan and the doctors did say that one part of his brain is damaged permanently. So he may deviate from his peers and stuff. At the moment, if you look at him, you wouldn't think any differently, just like a normal child. So it's something we'll just have to keep monitoring over the years as the years progress.
So Child M has brain damage, but it has not so far manifested in any demonstrable way. Professor Colin Morley said their resuscitation was suboptimal, so possibly hypoxia and subsequent brain damage are a consequence. But as for baby Elle, who was allegedly poisoned with such a massive whacking load of insulin, he suffers these lifelong effects. I am not intending on being scornful here. I will make my point more clearly after the mother has spoken.
Baby Elle also, whenever he sleeps at night time, his head is totally wet. He sweats every night. He says, Mummy, it's so sweaty, my head, whenever I sleep at night time. And I said, come on and sit near the fan. So he sits near the fan to dry his hair every day. I took him to the GP and then the GP is saying, it's normal, just keep an eye on them.
Yep, that's it. He gets a sweaty head in the night. Now, while I'm sure these are voice actors, they've either done the mother here a massive disservice or they're, picking up on the frantic, panicked, near histrionic, to be frank. I know that sounds derogatory, it's not intended to be, tone in, and other things like the precision in, documenting events, blah, blah. It's possible, maybe, that she's overreacting. It's possible that the doctor is right when he or she says it's normal. It's also possible that they are, very overprotective to the extent that, and I have actually known this to happen, that, the bedroom's kept overly warm and, pajamas and socks and full on covers and stuff like that. But I think it's quite possible, actually, this little boy is just really suffering a load of stress, at least from being aware of what's going on with his parents, with how his mother sounds on this, to his dad having a seizure due to stress.
You mentioned that you've suffered a seizure as a consequence of all the stress of this. What other impact has it had on your life?
I was happy-go-lucky, go with the flow, always smiling. But now I've become reserved, so like in the shell kind of thing. And there's no doubt it's going to affect me for the rest of my life. There's no way you can get away from it. It's always going to be there in the back of your mind.
I'm worried about my husband. Every day I'm thinking about Lucy Letby. Lucy Letby, everywhere we go to court, and she comes onto the witness box and tells lies. It was very, very hard.
It is legitimately insane that this is what was going on with them, and their lives have been turned upside down for no reason.
So your sons are now 7 years old. Just give us an idea of what they're like. Tell us a bit about them.
I get really creeped out by Liz Hull, and I don't by Caroline Cheatham in the same way. There's just something really kind of saccharine about her, i.e., massively overly sweet but patently artificial.
They're always fighting
Football.
and bike riding.
Yesterday they were practicing and practicing and falling down so many times.
Bruises everywhere.
But I love my kids too much.
Now, that is actually impossible, but it may be that her level of anxiety around having her children is now so high it's actually painful.
Even when they fight, even when they're arguing or fighting, they are my life.
And here comes the most shocking part.
And I think you've sat down your boys and told them that when they were tiny, that they were attacked.
As you may have heard at the time of this interview, these children were 7 years old.
We tried to say to them that Lucy has tried to harm you, but they don't understand.
Well, yeah, they are 7 and interested in learning to ride bikes. They can't ride a bike yet. I mean, if you were going to be really traditional about it, I think you'd probably say learn to ride the bike first before learning to deal with the concept that somebody tried to kill both you and your brother and has also killed loads of other people. And obviously, I am arguing this on the premise that she's guilty when clearly Lucy Letby is not guilty. She is in fact innocent.
They make a joke.
Oh, of course they do. Of course they make a joke. The only alternative is they are terrified.
Mummy, we will kick her, we'll bite her, we'll pull her hair. Mummy, they don't understand yet.
They don't understand yet is a comment that is peppered throughout both interviews with both sets of parents, funnily enough. Now, this is wildly inappropriate and unhealthy, and I mean, they're talking about this freely. There's no reticence on their part, is there? You know, what the hell? They should, I'm afraid, be seeking for some therapy for these boys, at least if they are coming out with this unprompted. Although I suspect it's not. It might even be a way of shutting their parents up. I mean, these boys are going to be like acutely aware of all of the tension in the house because, I mean, their parents are both getting out of work to go to this trial and their dad had a seizure due to stress. While their mother sounds like she's in the middle of some kind of histrionic episode, to be frank. I know that sounds like I'm insulting her. I really don't want to. So, considering they haven't worked it out for themselves, why were they not warned that this is incomprehensible to a 7-year-old? The way the parents speak about this so matter-of-factly, it really makes me wonder what on earth is going on behind the scenes with those liaison officers and any counsellors they've been provided. Why aren't they calling this out? Because it's fucking shocking, I'm afraid. These boys are not talking about how they might outwit her, how they might escape or identify her or some, other childlike kind of notion. No, they're talking about how they would attack her. All while they could have been reassuring these boys, don't worry, she's going to jail for the rest of her life. Oh, the danger here is these boys will feel an entitlement to act with violence towards women or just other people generally. The mother says, we try
to say to them.
It sounds like possibly this is arising quite often and this is the answer that kids will come up with. Of course it is. We'll get her, Mum, don't you worry. They can't ride bikes yet. What the hell? What the hell is going on? This is crazy shit.
We want them to know, but we don't want them to find out from anybody else in the future if we're not around. If they find out and then they say, Mum and Dad never told us.
At 7 years old, the only thing they should be aware of, if anything, is that there was a silly nurse at the hospital and people stopped her because people cared. She was very silly and she's been told off and she's gone away now. That's it. And all of that is, of course, predicated on the idea that Lucy Letby is guilty, and she isn't. I mean, the trial wasn't even finished when this interview was taken. I understand the wanting to stay a step ahead with the narrative. I do. But he's saying three things there, isn't he? It's important they know. We want them to know because we don't want them to find out from anyone else. That's several things there. We think it's important. We want them to know, but also we're doing it just so, he doesn't find out from someone else and feel betrayed. I would really suggest they give some thought as to which one of those is the prime force here. I mean, these boys are going to have some real issues if this isn't addressed. Secondly, they're under anonymity orders. You can't expect children to keep this stuff private. What the hell? How are they going to manage that? And if they are acting out, if they are playing, oh, like that one over there is Lucy, let's get her, sort of thing, they are not going to live their lives with people making excuses for their aggressive behaviour, if that were to occur, because they were victims of Lucy Letby. It's just not going to happen. Part of your role as a parent is just to make sure they can kind of interact on a level basis. And this is really, really undermining that.
Obviously, we'll speak to them again when they're a bit older, when they can understand. But it's important that they know this happened to them and they don't hear it from a third party or something.
And that is where Liz and Caroline leave the interview. They go on to talk about what great kids these people have. They clearly don't have any concerns over this either. It's an absolute tragedy. I know I will have sounded very critical of the parents. I am critical of them, but I also understand that when you are traumatized and in the eye of the storm, and I don't think they would have had much time to digest what was going on, because it would just been police and prosecution and updates constantly. If you've ever been involved with a court case, you'll know it's you constant updates, and it may have been difficult to keep it from their children if police come into the house, that sort of thing, but they should have been helped through this. It's awful, and I really do wish them all the best. I can't even help just keep wanting to go back and add more things, particularly the Lucy tried to harm you, because that's so familiar. It's very strange, like you need to make her sound as distant away as possible, I would have thought. It's awful. I get the feeling they're probably very young, and yeah, what a mess. Anyway, Liz and Caroline think everything's grand. Here we are.
Liz, so much came out of that.
The good news, Caroline, is that, they're both doing really well now. They're healthy 7-year-olds. And after the interview that I did, the parents were really keen for me to meet them. And they were lovely, lovely boys.
What were they doing?
They were typical 7-year-olds.
No way, really?
Really cute, matching sweatshirts, sat playing Roblox. Anyone that's got young children will know that kids love this video game called Roblox. They just finished watching SpongeBob SquarePants, scoffing Walker's crisps and pop. Gorgeous 7-year-olds, really.
I'm sure they are, and I hope that they're okay. I especially hope that once this grand deception has been unveiled fully and Lucy Letby is exonerated, they will be able to move on without having incurred too much damage. I've never listened to the podcast Liz and Caroline chatting, and the inanity, the fluff, the absolute loose womenism nonsense is fully nauseating. I am never going to listen to that again unless I'm convinced there's a secret code hidden within it that, I don't know, has some kind of meaning. That would be it. Yeah, maybe I could do it if there was a code for where £1 million was stashed or something. That's about it. Yeah, anyway, thank you so much. If you have managed to stick it out for the full 1 hour, 4 minutes and 41 seconds, you're a star. Cheers. See ya.
Liz, Caroline, lovely.
doing?
They were just, really cute on that. It looked like their mum and dad's phones. SpongeBob SquarePants. They were gorgeous.